Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arsaholics podcast on a Wednesday night special episode. Everyone's in for a treat. Not only do you get 2 episodes in a week, but you get a special guest. We're here to talk about Chelsea with my good friend and massive Chelsea fan, Prash. Prash, great to have you on the show, brother.
Thank you, mate. It's been a lifelong dream of mine to be on this, so I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for having me on, mate.
And I believe that you're genuine. You know, when you say lifelong dream, I believe that you've listened to every episode that we've done. What's been your favorite episode, given you're such a big fan?
It definitely wasn't the last one when you had that Tottenham fan who turned up late, drunk, and was coming up with all sorts. So that was one of my least ones. But yeah, in general, it's all been good.
If it makes you feel any better, that's probably the least favorite episode many of us who had the joy of being part of or listening to have felt. And you know what? That almost put us off having a guest. And so, you know, you are the redemption, right? So
Yeah,
you're doing it for all the guests out there. A lot hinges on you, man.
I felt that pressure coming in, but you know, hopefully I won't be a Spursy and be a bottle job. So yeah.
Love that. You know, you're only going to make like fans on this show if you just make more Spurs insults like that. So like, please do keep it up, man. I'm going to let you do a lot of talking today because even though you and me talk about Chelsea a lot, and I get a lot of what I know about Chelsea from you, I still feel there's a hell of a lot more that I have to learn from you. But I'm sure that a lot of our listeners and anyone who would have the privilege of listening to you speak will learn about Chelsea. You're probably the most knowledgeable Chelsea fan I know. I don't know many. Some you know who we both know don't know much about Chelsea, but you know, you are a bit of an oracle when it comes to Chelsea. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it, mate. So first I've got to thank you for being able to do this episode whilst your team are playing. They're literally playing right now. 2-1 up against Zagreb. It's about 15 minutes to go. Do you think you'll hang on?
I mean, we should do really with this kind of standard of team. But it's a mixture of first teams and second teamers. So, and it doesn't matter, even if we lose, we still top the group. So it's no real emphasis on winning, to be honest. But it would help having that winning mentality going into our next game.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a massive game this weekend against us. And you know, I'll end this episode with asking you about what you think is going to happen there. But let's like turn the clock back. Let's go all the way back to the summer. So look, Chelsea finished the season last season third, and it was one of those things where a lot of people predicted Chelsea would probably finish third at the beginning of last season. You were basically the third best team for the vast majority of this season. There was a little bit towards the end where it looked like, oh, will they drop out? But you didn't. You secured third, whatever. You came into the summer. You as a Chelsea fan coming into that summer, I imagine probably had thoughts about what you wanted to happen in terms of transfers, etc. But there was a lot of disruption with the owner change, etc. And we could spend a whole hour, I think, talking about Roman and everything. But let me just sort of ask you, in terms of you as a Chelsea fan who had analysed exactly what Chelsea were all about the season before and had looked up and seen Man City and Liverpool, what was it that you wanted to happen last summer that you thought would close the gap on those teams? And to what extent do you think Chelsea did that in the summer?
Yeah, I think we needed a bit of a cull really in terms of our recruitment. There's been quite a lot of players from previous managers who have come with previous tactics and things like that, and we just seem to have like a cluster of players who don't fit Thomas Tuchel's system. So if you go back a little bit, you know, you've got players from Conte's era who was a very pragmatic manager, and then you had like players from Maurizio Sarri, who was meant to be this attacking vertical tiki-taka. You know, you had Lamps, who was all out attack but no defensive. You know, just don't play with any defenders. Then you got Thomas Tuchel, who's meant to mesh it all together, and he's kind of stuck with this formation of 3-4-3. So you kind of wanted players who could play that position. And like, you know, we were kind of looking looking for like players who can play as a backup to Reece James, for example, at wing back, because when we lost Ben Chilwell the year before, like there was no real like quality of a replacement. We had Marcus Alonso, yes, but there's a real drop in quality for that. And Reece James actually missed quite a big chunk of the season, and we just didn't have a replacement. So, you know, that's one area. The midfield needed a lot of mending. You had like the likes of Kante, Kovacic, who are missing a lot of games more and more each season. And then you've got someone like Jorginho, who I don't think is quite suited to the Premier League. He's very one-dimensional, shall we say. We need like a real like tackling midfielder in the middle of the park, which we've missed for so long, since Matic actually. And that was the last time we actually had a sustained title charge. So a lot of areas there. You could also say the striker situation with Lukaku and things like that. And we had like players like Pulisic and Ziyech. So yeah, as I've just like gone on, there's like quite a lot of players that needed either moving on or, you know, coming into the club. And yeah, I think the way the transfers were coming in, it looked good. It seemed like we had an obsession of getting as many defenders as we can. So I don't know whether he wanted to go, you know, 8-2 or something like that. I don't know, but he was just kept on going for defenders. And when we had like other pressing matters, which was a bit annoying, and you can see in the last few games the same problems are reoccurring.
Did you feel, so it's interesting you say that about the defenders point, because I seem to recall in the summer it did feel like there were a couple of defenders who not only did end up leaving, but some who it looked like might leave as well, and it looked like there perhaps was going to be a situation where you were going to have to almost replace your entire back line, more or less. But it sounds like you were surprised that you actually did go in for so many defenders, because I do remember, I think it was Kimpembe, I want to say, was another player who nearly joined Chelsea and didn't. There was Nathan Ake as well. But you think that was
Jules Koundé,
Koundé, of
Delict.
course, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were surprised though that you know, you were going to go for so many.
Yeah, because I kind of thought, well, is he going to change formation and play with a back four? And also, you have to remember, on top of all of that, we've got like a 38-year-old, you know, Thiago Silva. So yeah, I kind of felt like he was just getting as many defenders as he can. Maybe he wanted to stick with this back three. Maybe he wanted to sell a couple of them. I don't know, but it was a very bizarre transfer strategy, I felt. I think we got it right in the end. I'm glad we didn't go for Delict. I don't think he's as great as people make out. Jules Koundé is a decent defender, but yeah, I think Fofana, probably not as good, but he's Premier League suited. I mean, we'll probably talk about it later, but like in terms of transfers, I'm very wary about bringing players from other leagues. If you're Premier League proven, then I'd rather have that rather than a so-called flashy player or a renowned player from other leagues that haven't stepped foot in the Premier League. Because we've been burnt so many times getting players from other leagues and they're just not fitted well.
Oh, true. So was there anywhere that you think that you didn't address in the summer that you were surprised that you didn't address?
Midfield, 100%. We've missed a tackling midfielder. Like I said, with those four, I mean, we had Kovacic, Kante, and Jorginho, and bizarrely, apparently we got a guy called Zakaria who's making his debut today. Funnily enough, his first minutes, and he scored. So
yeah,
so clearly he's doing something right. But again, like why get a player that is barely being used in the first few games with Tuchel? Like it just didn't make sense. And apparently he's not even a defensive midfielder. So that was a big problem. If you look at all the top teams in the league in Europe, everyone has a proper defensive midfielder, like a tackling midfielder, whether it's Rodri, before that was Fernandinho, whether it's Fabinho, whether it's Partey. You know, you look around, there's always that player there. You need that. You can't get away with it.
and that wasn't Kante for you?
Kante's not a defensive midfielder. He does everything. He's a number 6. He's a number 8. You know, sometimes he can be a number 10, but like he does all those roles in one position in central midfield. Like you always need like someone kind of like sitting next to him to like do all your tackling. You can get away with it with him playing, but he can't do everything in every game, if that makes sense. Like sometimes you just have to rest him and he can't play. And then when we have that, there's no one there to kind of fill that job.
And do you think, and we'll get onto this a little bit later as to maybe, what you want next summer, but do you think it was a simple case where you probably did look at addressing central midfield, but the real targets that you wanted weren't available and you weren't willing to kind of get a second best, and you loaned a Zakaria, like you mentioned, but aside from that, you want to keep some of the coffers there for a big move in?
Maybe that's probably a good way of saying it, because I think Declan Rice has been on our radar for a few years now, and obviously West Ham, they weren't going to sell him this year. I think after next summer he'll have 2 years left on his contract. So there's a good chance that we go in hard for him next summer. He would be the ideal replacement or the ideal player that you'd want in. Anyone else I can't really think of. We did do a last minute bid on this Ajax player on the last day of the window. We went like 50 million. I think his name's, I don't want to get this wrong because it reminds me of someone. I think his name's Alvarez, funnily enough. But I think the Ajax guy. So we went in for him. He wanted the move, put in a transfer request, but it was way too late in the window, which comes across as a bit of bad planning. But at least they tried to address it. But maybe they are just saving all their money. Probably in January, I reckon we'll go back in for that guy in January, and then also go in for Rice in the summer.
Fine. So the window, so the window happens, and then Boehly sacks the manager. I think it was a surprise to everyone. I rate Thomas Tuchel really, really highly. Won the Champions League with Chelsea. Thought it was a brilliant manager. How did you feel when he was sacked? Did you see any sign of it happening? And how did you feel? Yeah.
No, not at all. It was a massive shock. I felt like Roman was back. I genuinely did. Like, I've been so used to like surprise sackings. Then when this came out, it was just massive shock. I felt it was massively premature. I know we weren't doing so well, but it just came as a massive surprise, because you kind of felt the run that we were on wasn't great, but he deserved a chance to fix it. A lot of players coming through and whatever, like it kind of you kind of needed a bit more time to like make sure everyone meshed together. So yeah, massive surprise. But I think it's one of those things, once you then start looking into the reasons why behind the scenes and everything, you can kind of understand where they were going with it. And I just don't think they saw Tuchel as a long-term manager for their vision of the club.
But that sounds like it was a very calculated thing. And in that respect, why would they let him have a whole window? Why do you think it happened when it did?
I think when you look at the window in general, in terms of the players, I think it's one of those things where if you were to list those players, whether it was Aubameyang, we'll forget Zakaria for a moment, but Fofana, Cucurella, Sterling, who else am I missing?
Some of the younger players, Chukwueze.
Yeah, but like if you look at the main senior players, Koulibaly, if you look at those players, and if you said, listen, if you told Arsenal or City or Liverpool or United, these players are coming in for the summer, I don't think any fan would say no to most of them, like 90% of them. Like, they're all very good players that can work under different managers. So I think they just saw, listen, we brought in a set of players that can work under different tactics, different managers, or this future manager that could be coming in. So I don't think it was necessarily Thomas Tuchel picking these players. I think he said, I want this kind of player, and then it was down to the board and the recruitment to get these players in. And I think that's what they're seeing. I think that's what they want to do in future. They want to like speak with the manager, see what kind of players he wants, and then discuss what their targets are. Obviously they were at the very beginning of that stage when they did their recruitment, but I think that's the road they want to go down. They want a more like a more holistic, more cohesive, collaborative collaboration with the new manager in terms of recruitments coming in. Also, I think they want to work with like our youth our youth coaches and things like that to bring in like young talent. So, and I don't think Tuchel. I think Tuchel's the kind of guy who just wants to manage. He just wants to coach, and I get that. I completely get that. He just wants to get on the training pitch and coach. But if you want to believe all the stories, like apparently he was getting called every day. What about this player? What about that player? Apparently he was meant to go for a meeting. He sent his agent, which is
I saw that.
yeah, which is quite ballsy.
And apparently he was getting annoyed that Ronaldo kept coming up in the discussions.
Yeah. Which I get. I completely get. So yeah, I can see why they did it. They also said they did like 100-day takeover analysis. So they just looked at what happened in the last 100 days and they kind of figured out, you know what, this is not the guy to take our club forward, or that marries up with their vision.
It's interesting. So I suppose in some ways, right, it sounds like from what you're saying that you actually had a fairly good impression of Boehly, the regime, in terms of what they were bringing. It sounds like you know they gave you an impression that they had a plan, etc., etc. So when they ended up going for Potter, did that surprise you?
A little bit, and in terms of, I guess it's probably one of those things where being a Chelsea fan, you're just used to one world-class manager or one of the top managers in football and being sacked, and then we get another one. So I thought like a big, like a bigger name, like a more sexy name would like come in through Europe or wherever. So I think that was my surprise. But if you think about it, Potter was getting a lot of praises throughout the Premier League, whether it's pundits, whether it's fans. So it was one of those things where he was bound to get a chance from somewhere, and it just happened to be us. I don't think so. From what I've heard, like apparently they were very impressed with him when they were like talking about Cucurella. Like they were speaking to Brighton's chairman and owners, and they were talking about Graham Potter while they're doing the Cucurella negotiations and things like that. So once you got that in your head of like what this manager could potentially do, and when you hear what he's done in the last few years, you kind of see why he got his opportunity. But in terms of like the name that came out, yeah, it was initially it was a bit of a surprise.
I mean, the Brighton chairman must be kicking himself for having that conversation. I mean, he probably,
Yeah.
if it did sway you guys, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because Graham Potter's rise has just been crazy. It's funny. I was seeing this the other day. I forgot to message you about it actually. There's this thing around football manager challenges. I don't know if you've heard about this, where basically, and it's the whole, can you take a club in the 4th division of Sweden and can you get a job in the Premier League within 6 years or something like this?
Wow. Okay.
It's like the Potter challenge, and when you put it like that, it is ridiculous, like how far he's come. Yeah, to manage Chelsea, who, as you rightly pointed out, have a reputation for going and getting the best managers. Like, who is the best manager available in Europe? You go for that basically, and if you can't get that, you get the second best manager who's available in Europe. Like, that's almost like your strategy. And see this guy get it. It's very interesting. It's quite refreshing, you know, from I imagine from a Chelsea fan's perspective, in the sense that it's something different. So what have you seen of him so far? Like, so talk me through. We've got, you've got Tuchel, and you've got everything that Tuchel brought to the team and how he was playing, etc. And we often hear managers come in and say, when they take a new job, they sort of say, well, I don't want to change everything immediately, etc. So I guess there's a chance that, given it's still relatively new, some of the things that Potter might want to do, he's not doing yet. But what have you seen so far from the Potter era, and how he wants to play? Who are his favorite kind of players? Just talk to me a little bit about what you see.
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit too early to say in terms of what he's trying to do. I mean, one of the things that I've seen is he wants the ball to be played a lot quicker. I think you can see that the first few games after Tuchel went. There was a lot of times during Tuchel's era, like especially towards the end, where it was just very pass the ball side to side. If that doesn't work, okay, let's go back the other side. There was no like real emphasis on like passing the ball forwards, whereas Potter is trying to do that. He's also changing the formation a lot during the game. So whether he starts with a 3, he'll change to a 4, whether he starts with a 4, he'll change to a 3, whether it's a midfield, he pushes to a diamond, or, you know, he'll play a flat 4. Yeah, he tries a lot of things within games.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So at least he's not, and this isn't a slight on Tuchel at all, but at least he tries and fixes things if they're not working. So, for example, I think it was a United game, he took someone off after half an hour. I think it was Cucurella after half an hour because it just wasn't working. We were just completely getting flooded in midfield. And he brought on an extra midfielder. So he sees things and he acts upon it immediately, which is one thing I like, because there were a lot of frustrating times when you see Tuchel, like it wasn't going right, and Tuchel would just wait until half time or something like that. So I'd say those two are probably the biggest things that I've seen in terms of his players. I mean, Mason Mount has started every game under him, so you'd have to say like he's probably one of his key players. In terms of defenders, we've had to chop and change. Thiago Silva would be the number one on his team sheet, but
right.
he would be on our, you know, team sheet for any manager. But yeah, he's chopping and changing a lot. That's probably another trait actually. I don't think we've been consistent with players. Like I think he makes about 3 or 4 changes every game. That might be because the World Cup's coming and there's loads of games thick and fast. We're playing like 3 times a week kind of thing. So maybe he's just trying to refresh the squad. So that
and you've been quite unlucky with injuries, haven't you? I think it's kind of gone under the radar because Liverpool are getting a lot of attention because of how many injuries that they've had. And I think by contrast, that's been quite a big story. And so any injuries that other teams seem to have are kind of put in the background. But you guys have actually had quite a lot of injuries this season, haven't you? I mean, there's at least 5 or 6 players out, I want to say, who arguably could start for you.
Yeah, just as you say that, Ben Chilwell's pulled his hamstring, so you can add that one as well.
Oh, no.
So yeah, we have. I mean, we've got. Yeah, I mean, I'm one of these people that I don't like to bring injuries up. Like we're one of the top teams in the league. We've got a good enough squad to cover that, but it's annoying when one of your key players gets injured and there's no real like for like replacement. Like it's one of those things where if one player is never going to be as good as the one that starts, but if you've got like a similar profile, then it kind of helps. But if it's a completely, so for the example I'll give you is Reece James. If Reece James doesn't play, the backup is Azpilicueta. So they're completely opposite scales as a right wing back. Azpilicueta can't run. Reece James can. Reece James is strong. He's fast. He's quick. He's agile. That is not Azpilicueta. Like that's not a slight on him. It's just the situation we're in. So it's one of those things where when we've got key players out, it does make a big difference. For example, like Kante's out for 4 months. Like he's our, he's probably our best player. Like he's our biggest.
You'd still say that? You'd say Kante's your best player?
On his day, he's unreal. On his day, there's no player in world football that can do what he does.
Still, you'd say that, yeah?
Yeah, 100%. He's just so influential. He's so dominant. He's so key to everything good that we do. And like I said, when I talked about the midfield, like he is that guy that grabs it by the throat and he just takes it.
We watching Ben Chilwell there. Like, I'm seeing him as well. It looks like a proper injury, doesn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't look good. But yeah, like, so yeah, there have been injuries, but I think it's one of those things where we can get by. But yeah, once you lose 1 or 2 key players, like Reece James is a massive player for us, like massive. And, there's no one really to cover for him. It's one of those things, if Ben Chilwell is out, at least you've got Cucurella, who's still a very good left back. So whereas Reece James, there really isn't. And then there's other positions in the pitch that you could say similar as well.
We were talking about this on our last episode. We were talking about Arsenal players at the moment and, where there's an injury, where it would be a concern. And, it kind of got me reflecting that there's different ways of looking at it, right? Like, so if you look at it from an Arsenal perspective, Gabriel Jesus is a very important player for us. But at the same time, if he gets injured, you don't have to change your system. You just have Eddie Nketiah, who is like almost a less good version of Jesus. So, but then when you look at someone like Thomas Partey, what we sort of concluded in our last pod is if Thomas Partey is injured or he's unavailable, you have to play a different system. You just can't play the same thing. And it sounds like that's what you're saying with Reece James, with him being out. It's just not. It's not a like. And what about some other areas, mate? Because this season, and if you reflect on how this season's gone, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because actually, when I think about it in my mind, I've actually got various games where I have memories of Chelsea dropping points, but at the same time, you're actually not doing that badly in the league. It's not like you've got yourselves into a Liverpool kind of situation here. You're still sort of up there and thereabouts with, obviously so much of the season to go. But if you could evaluate the season so far, I mean, just describe it to me from your perspective. Like, how has it been?
It's a tough one because I think I can't remember. I think it's like 3 or 4 games Tuchel was in charge of. We only played well in one of those games, and that was against Tottenham, which we drew to. The
Very
other
unlucky
games
to draw that, weren't you? Because you really should have won.
Yeah. I mean, that you could blame ourselves for that as well. But like the game against Everton, the first day of the season, we were bad. We just won by a penalty. The Leeds game, we got absolutely battered 3-0. I mean, I think Leeds, before they played Liverpool, hadn't won a game since they beat us 3-0. That's how bad they've been. And then we lost to Southampton. Like we were playing really dreadful football, and like performance-wise, really bad. You can kind of accept when you play well, like against the Tottenham game, when you play well and don't get a result. But like the other games were just terrible performance. And then when Potter came in, I think he's had about 8 or 9 games. I'd say he's won the games that you kind of expect to win, and that's fair enough. Like you have to give props to that. But then we got battered on the weekend by Brighton, and then we kind of like against United, they should have beaten us quite comfortably actually. So we kind of got away with that. So yeah, performance have been up and down. It's really been inconsistent, and this is what we've been like for the last 2 years. Like so inconsistent. We can put in a real good performance against a top team, whether it's in Europe or in the league, but then sometimes against the not so great teams, I don't know. There's something just not quite clicking there. I don't know whether it's maybe they're low blocking and we don't have like enough creativity to do something, or I don't know. There's something just not really working. There's a reason why there's inconsistencies, and I don't know whether it's the chopping and changing, whether it's changing the tactics, changing the players all the time. I just don't know, but I'm hoping Potter can just like fix it. I think he's maybe just rotating quite a lot because of this busy schedule or injuries, but I'm hoping he can figure it out, because that's been a real problem of ours for the last 2 years.
Because the easy thing, I suppose, would be to say at this point that it's because you got a new manager that's in, and when new managers come in, it takes time, and you've also got a lot of new players in. But out of the players that that have tended to play for Chelsea, who are the ones that you think have been letting you down in some ways? If you look for, you listed out a whole bunch of players that you signed this season, and you're completely right. I think as an Arsenal fan, aside from Aubameyang for obvious reasons, I still take all of those players that you've mentioned at Arsenal. Who they would all improve the squad. So who is it that which sort of players do you think have not been stepping up and really doing what they should be doing to get Chelsea as a consistent fighting for the title kind of form type side?
I mean, I'd say like probably the last 2 years, the likes of Ziyech and Pulisic, who came in for like quite decent money, they epitomize the word inconsistent. Like some days, and I'd add Havertz as well to that. Like, these players came in for like quite big money, and they've just not performed on a consistent level. And you kind of think, okay, you know what? First year of the Premier League is always a betting season. And then you think, okay, second season, okay, third season, this is going to be it. And it's still like utter dross. Like it's so painful sometimes watching them, to the point where I think Potter realizes that, and he barely plays Ziyech at all. I think he'll be gone in January. Pulisic is one of these weird ones where on some days he can look unreal, but on most days, and when I say most days, 90% of the games, whether he's starting or whether he's coming on as a sub, he's looked atrocious as well.
Is it a confidence thing, or is it what is it, do you think?
I don't know. I really don't know, because he's been living off that purple patch. I think it was like Project Restart, where that period he was probably like the best player in the world. Like
he was incredible. He was incredible.
He was just scoring every game. Obviously, I don't think he was the best player in the world. Just saying. But
I know what you mean. But I recall that the FA Cup final, Arsenal probably, you could argue that if he doesn't get injured in the middle of the game, Arsenal may not win that game.
Yeah, like leading up to that final, he was scoring in every game, assisting, everything. But then after that, it's just, I don't know whether it's injuries, because he does get a lot of injuries. He's been starting a lot of games in the last year or so, but not taking his opportunity. I'm starting to see why at Dortmund, a 17-year-old Jadon Sancho like replaced him in the lineup. I'm starting to see those kind of like vibes. Like he's not really putting in too much effort. He's pulling out of tackles. He's just not consistent. I think he's one of these players that like gets himself into a team for like a few years and then he just goes off the boil. I think he probably needs a new challenge. And you know what? If he does go somewhere else, he'll probably kill it for a few years and then he'll go down again. But I think Havertz is the one that's let me down the most. Like he came in with like such like this generational talent, like
huge potential. The way that the German media were talking about him when he came to Chelsea, is like, this is the next big German talent. This is like our biggest export right now. There are people really upset that he left Germany. So this guy's got it all. And I remember thinking, Chelsea getting him, that's a huge coup.
Yeah, and
talk to me about him.
It's just not work. I don't know whether the system doesn't suit him, but we've tried him in like every position that he played in at Leverkusen. He mainly played as a false nine or as a 10 or a attacking right winger. We played him in all those positions, and he's just been so inconsistent. Again, one of these players that's kind of lived off that Champions League goal, and he's had some amazing moments, don't get me wrong, but you expect a guy who's been in the league now for 3 years to kind of like step up and be that guy, be that generational talent that people are saying that you are. And he just hasn't been. He's just been so inconsistent. And I think this season is make or break for him, because if he doesn't do well, if he has like another season like he has in the last two, then we have to sell him, because he'll be down to his last year. And then it gets a bit tricky. So you either sell him or you give him a new contract after the end of this season. So yeah, it's make or break time for him.
He gets minutes, though, doesn't he?
He does get minutes, and that's why I put him ahead of Ziyech and Pulisic, because those guys tend to come on as a sub. It's a little bit harder to like impress. But Havertz starts a lot of games, and he's just not being great at all. So that's why I'll put him as like the biggest disappointment.
Okay. And talk to me about Aubameyang, Prash, because when he, it's very strange as an Arsenal fan still, I think, seeing him in a Chelsea shirt. It's also really weird as an Arsenal fan seeing, I suppose, the arc over the last kind of 6 months or so. Bear in mind, about what we're in November now. So a year ago, less than a year ago, he was playing football for Arsenal. And in that time he's gone to Barcelona and now he's at Chelsea. So from my perspective, everything's happened so fast. It's always crazy to see all that happen. And when he went to Barcelona, I was fairly sort of agnostic about it, in the sense that I still quite liked Aubameyang from what he did for Arsenal. Wanted him to do well at Barcelona. I didn't mind. There were some Arsenal fans who didn't want him to do well, because they would have thought that meant that we made the wrong decision. I was quite at peace for it. But it's weird now when he goes to a Premier League rival. He's our former captain, going to a Premier League rival where I look at him and I still think that on his days he's a very good striker. How do you think he's been at Chelsea, and were you surprised to get him in the first place?
I wasn't surprised because of the whole Tuchel links. Like, I think I think it was very obvious that we needed a striker. We couldn't go a new season with just Kai Havertz and Broja as our two options. We needed like an experienced striker, and I think he was perfect for it. Like, he knows the Premier League, he knows how to score goals. I think it was a good fit. He knows Thomas Tuchel, so it was a good fit. But in terms of like how he's fitted in so far, I think he's done all right. I think it's. I mean, I wonder what he's thinking. He's probably thinking, "Oh, do you know what? I kind of like it in Barcelona, but I like Tuchel. Let me go and like meet up with him. We're good mates." And then like 7 days later, he gets sacked. So he must be thinking, "What the hell is going on here? What have I come to?" So for him to like take all of that, and also like the incident in Barcelona, where he's had like a few weeks off and all of that. So I think putting all of that into consideration, he's actually done quite well. I think he's got like 5 goals maybe for us this season. And he's fitted in okay. Again, we don't really have that much creativity for him, but he's getting in the right positions. He's getting in positions where a lot of our strikers tend to miss, or when you're playing a false nine, things like that. So I think it's one of those things he'll get better and better as the weeks go, and Potter can work on. I don't know if a Gabon in the World Cup.
I don't think so.
No,
have Gabon ever qualified for the World Cup? I'm not sure they have.
I've not. You'd be surprised how many of these teams are just turned us up on ITV at 7:00. So yeah, I'll kind of expect Potter to kind of work on him during the World Cup. He'll work on his match fitness, things like that, and hopefully after the World Cup he comes firing again.
Do you think there's any chance that in January you might go in for another striker?
No, I can't see that. I think I can see maybe Broja going out on loan. I can maybe see that, but I'm not sure whether I can see someone coming in. I've not heard anything, but no, I can probably see Broja going out, but no incomings for a striker.
Fine. Okay, listen, mate. When we look at sort of where we are now, so Chelsea is 6th right now in the league. You've had like a few games. The last 3 games have been 2 draws and a loss, so just a little bit of a challenging patch. But still, overall, when we look at the gap to the top 4, it's 3 points, and you've got a game in hand over Newcastle and Spurs there. But at this point in time now, if you look where we are, again, so much time to be played, obviously. What are your hopes for Chelsea this season at this stage? What do you think is a good season from now, or what would you take from now, and what would be a complete failure in your perspective?
So I think my expectations have changed due to a change of manager. So if I'm gonna go with Potter, I mean, I'm hopeful to be top 4. But the way things are going right now, and like you said, there is a lot of football to go. You kind of take top 6 right now. I just think I'm not sure whether we're consistent enough to finish top 4. I think it's so hard to call, especially now Newcastle have entered the party. I think it's so hard to call your top 4s, even like your top 6 if you want. So I think a definite's got to be top 6. Like no matter what you've done, like, as Chelsea Football Club, not in an arrogant way. Like there's certain clubs in the Premier League that should always finish top 6, regardless of what is going on. I'd like to think we can finish top 4. Would I put my mortgage on it? Absolutely not. But an absolute failure would be to finish outside top 6. Like you just cannot with the quality of those. The way I see it is these guys won the Champions League about 15 months ago. You can't go from there. Plus add like 300 million spent in the summer as well. You can't go from there to like outside of the top 6. I mean, you can't really go from there to outside the top 4 in my opinion. But with a new manager, I'll kind of like give him that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So yeah, but yeah, absolute failure will be outside the top 6.
And do you see, just touching back onto January, do you see there being any kind of injection in January that that might push you close to whatever you can achieve?
I think we'll get a couple of players in. I reckon maybe a couple of loans or something, but I reckon we'll go in for that Ajax guy, the defensive midfielder. I think we'll go in for him. And I think we might get a backup for Reece James as a right wing back.
How long is Reece James out for?
So he's out. He was out for like a couple of 5-6 weeks, 2 weeks ago. No, I think he's out for another further 5-6 weeks. It's touch and go with the World Cup. I don't think he makes that, but he has been picking up a lot of injuries in the last 2-3 years. So yeah, I think it's quite crucial to bring in like a decent backup for him.
Fine, fair enough. And you've kind of got an interesting period of games coming up, haven't you? Because when I look through your next kind of 6 or 7 games, they're sort of games that they're either quite tough games, or they should be quite straightforward games. So you've got us and Newcastle coming up, which both of them, I imagine are quite tricky, given how Arsenal and Newcastle are doing this season, are relatively tricky and in relative terms. But then you've got Bournemouth and Forest, which hopefully should be more straightforward. But then you've got City, and then you've got Palace, and then you've got Liverpool. It's a very interesting set of fixtures. It's not necessarily a period of tough fixtures or a period of easy ones. I mean, it feels like it will be a very important period for you guys, given you're playing a couple of those other teams who are going to be competing for those top 6 positions. I suppose there's a real opportunity to take some points of them and get right back in the top 4 race.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to be honest, I haven't really looked at, and I'm not really looking at anything after the World Cup. I'm kind of thinking like quite away. I'm just thinking of these next 2 Premier League games, because I think the World Cup is just going to be so weird. Like coming back from the World Cup, I don't even think they get rests or anything like that. It's like, I think it's only like a week or so between the last day and Boxing Day. So you just don't know which players are available, who can play and who needs a rest and things like that. It's going to be a really weird, reset almost. But I'd say like the next 2 games is absolutely massive. Like I was actually saying this the other day. I don't know whether at this point I'd probably take 2 draws. But then you're thinking, actually, you know what? I'll take 1 loss and 1 win, because Newcastle are a really good team. You guys are flying. We're in quite patchy form, so it's kind of like one of those things. Just get all points against one of them, and I think that will be quite decent. I can't for the life of me see us winning both of those games. So yeah, I take 1 win out of those 2 for sure. And then after that, yeah, like you said, we're playing City on the 2nd, I think. I think it's is that the 2nd?
I've got the fixtures up. You're playing City on the 5th, Thursday the 5th, and you've
Thursday
got
5th.
Nottingham Forest on the 1st of January.
Okay, fine. Okay. So yeah, like there are some easy games at the start of that, but like you said, we've got Liverpool, we've got City, which are going to be big games as well. So yeah, there's a lot to play for, and like I said earlier, we kind of struggle against lower end teams as well. So who knows what can happen?
Yeah, definitely. And with the cup competitions as well, obviously the main cup competition, the League Cup, I think kicks off next week for us all, right? And then FA Cup, and obviously you've been in the Champions League. You're one of those teams that I can see quite easily winning one of those trophies, and I mean any one of those trophies. We've seen Chelsea win the Champions League twice now, one in a season. The first one that you won, it was a season that wasn't really quite going so well either, was it? I imagine as a Chelsea fan, you still harbour those kind of ambitions. You're probably used to being now a club that every season probably wins a trophy, right? So, is it one of those things that you turn around and say, if you finish top 6 in a transitional year with a new manager, but manage to pick up a trophy, that's a pretty acceptable season, right?
Yeah, you'd have to say so at this stage. Like, Graham Potter I know he's not a new manager, but he's coming to a big club. This is a new setting for him, new bunch of players. And you know, we're in a very like we're probably in the most, you know, the toughest league in Europe, you know, with like the best managers, the best players. So yeah, you'd probably take a top six. When I say, I mean, would I take a League Cup? I guess so, but I guess FA Cup's a little bit more prestigious. But yeah, you wouldn't complain just coming top six and winning a trophy of some
No,
sort.
absolutely not. So before we get on to getting your thoughts on Arsenal actually, and then getting your thoughts on the fixture itself this weekend, there is one other area of Chelsea I wanted to talk to you about, because one of the really interesting things that has been a feature, I think, of the Boehly regime has been, firstly, this initial kind of real aggressive recruitment of talented young players, including Amari Hutchinson from Arsenal, which I'd love to get your thoughts on in a sec. But you've also very recently really, really revamped your sort of technical and recruitment staff in terms of the senior staff. And I think you raided Brighton for a couple of their guys. Again, their chairman must absolutely hate you, honestly. So talk me through that. So it's a change, isn't it? Because Chelsea have almost been synonymous over the last however many years for having this amazing academy, yet not really relying on your young players. But now you're aggressively recruiting young players, and with this new technical director and recruitment staff, etc. Do you see a real change at Chelsea? What do you think?
Yeah, so from what I've been reading, is that they're going for a similar kind of model to City Group, as in have players, have clubs around Europe, around the world, where you can just have players going in between them. It's very similar to what City did. So I think City have got didn't they buy Palermo? They got Sochaux, the French club. They've got one in Australia, one in New York.
Melbourne Fury, I want to say, is their team, or something like this.
Something like that. So I think that's what they want to do. They want to do like a whole multiple of clubs around the world. We actually got their previous CEO who headed that. So we got previous Man City's CEO. We brought in a technical director from Monaco, I think. There's so many I just can't keep a track of. And he did a similar kind of role before Monaco. We went for the RB Leipzig guy as a technical director, because he's obviously the Red Bull model and things like that. So it seems like he's going for that kind of thing. He's just going for a multi-model around a global multi-club model, where players can just play it with one strategy, with one philosophy, and that can just continue wherever they are. I think it's also a new revenue stream as well, get all of America, get all of South America, get some of Europe, all that kind of thing. So I think ultimately it just leads to having the best young players across the world, all playing with the Chelsea first team within.
Does that excite you? Does that excite you? You up for that direction, or do you worry that with that comes a cost of maybe not not being as aggressively hunting top spot every season?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels very long term, which I can kind of see, but it kind of feels like there's more pressing problems at the club right now. Why don't we just address that? And then, I mean, they've only been in the door 5 minutes, so you kind of would have thought just give this season a go, and then see where that takes us, and then have talks, by all means, have talks and get an idea of what you can do. But like you said, they've gone really aggressive about this, and it looks like they are gonna go with this strategy. But no, I quite like the whole. They still want to invest in the youth, which has been a real bonus for us. And how they're really backing our youth team coaches, our head of youth development. This is the guy that made Musiala, for example, your Mason Mount, your Conor Gallagher's, your Reece James, all of that, all around the world. He's been backed immensely. Hence why you had the Amari Hutchinson, you had the guy from Aston Villa, the Carney
Courtney,
Chukwuemeka.
yeah.
There's another guy at Inter. So, I quite like that they're still investing in the youth and keeping an eye on that. But yeah, I just kind of see this as more of a long-term strategy rather than like short-term gains.
Fair. I'm going to ask you about Amari Hutchinson in a second. Before I do that, Nish is in the comments saying he apologizes for tuning in late. So I referenced on the last pod that I was in a stag do in Amsterdam over the weekend, where I watched the Chelsea game in a bar, and I did say that there was a Chelsea fan next to me. So the stag do was Nish, who was in the comments, and the Chelsea fan who was next to me in the bar was Prash. So yeah, Nish is also saying, Prash, that I don't know what he means by this. A shot for the disrespect. I don't know if it means that it's a shot for you or a shot for him. Anyway, it's good to see he's still alive. I hadn't really heard from him since the stag. So
true.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to know that you're alive, Nish. Well done. We had a great time on the stag.
He did well. I'll give him that. He did well,
especially because Liverpool lost as well, and that wouldn't have been
Yeah.
that wouldn't have been easy. And I put in Joe Gomez, and he got upset with me, and then Joe Gomez made a howler. Yeah, sorry. But just going back to topic, Amara Hutchinson was a player that Arsenal fans were quite excited about, actually, because he kind of had this reputation when he was younger of being a bit of a YouTube sensation. He had, did all these kind of amazing kind of videos when he was young, and then he's at Arsenal. He was he was doing quite well, and then he gets around the first team squad, did some good things in preseason, did some good stuff in the under-21s. I think people generally thought he was going to be in and around in the first team this season, and then he joined Chelsea. Felt like it was out of nowhere. How's he been doing at Chelsea, Prash?
He's been doing really well, like really well. He's been playing a lot in our development team, so that's kind of like, it's kind of like an under-21 team that plays against some like conference teams and things like that. But like, he's also played a lot in the under-21s, and he's been doing really well. Like a lot of the coaches have been like praising him massively, to the point where he actually made the bench last week against Brighton. So apparently, like, so we've got this City game coming up in the League Cup, Carling Cup, whoever it's sponsored by now. I think on that day, I think Jamaica are playing, and I think he was meant to fly over there, but apparently we've asked him to delay his decision because there's a good chance that he could be playing in that game, in the City game. But in terms of how he's been doing brilliantly. Like, I get where you're coming from with the YouTube sensation. I don't know how you describe it. It's like he's very technically very good, but also like he just does some ridiculous things that you kind of think, well, will that actually work?
A bit Adel Tarabt.
Yeah. Very much so. But no, like, I mean, he's been doing really well. He's continually progressing, and to the point where you make the bench, like, he must be doing some things right. I think the plan is for him to go out on loan in January. But yeah, he's been doing well. It was a bit, like you said, I was a bit surprised he left Arsenal, because I would have thought he would have thought that there was a better chance of getting first team minutes over there than here. But I think maybe obviously Saka's got that right hand spot, locked. But then you went for this you got this Marquinhos?
Yeah, Marquinhos on the right hand side as well.
Yeah,
isn't he? Fabio Vieira is sort of biased towards the right hand side as well. So maybe those things came in. You never know really the reasons, you know. And I think that I guess good luck to the guy, obviously. Just moving on, conscious of time. Massive game on the weekend. Well, from an Arsenal fan's perspective, obviously the season's been incredibly refreshing, because we're not used to doing this well. It's been a long time since we've been doing this well. And from me watching Arsenal, it's hard. As much as I try to remain unbiased, you always have rose-tinted glasses somewhat on your players, etc., and how you're doing. From a Chelsea fan's perspective, what have you thought about Arsenal this season?
Oh, mate, you guys have been like quality. I don't think anyone can say otherwise. Like, is it what 10 wins out of 12 in the Premier League, something like that.
Yeah,
That's
10
kind
out
of
of 12. Yeah.
that's kind of like City levels, City Liverpool levels from the past years. So yeah, you can only. I know a lot of people will say, "Oh yeah, but they've only played easy teams," but you still have to beat them. There's anyone can beat anyone on their day. So yeah, you can only say good things about your team this season.
And so when we look at this game that's coming up on the weekend, then what do you think? Because you see, look, my thoughts when on our last pod when we were previewing the game is that I sort of feel when it comes to big games like this, form tends to go out the window somewhat. And it becomes a bit more about the occasion. Big players tend to step up even if they're out of form. Chelsea have a lot of big players, very experienced players. Um, and uh, and I also sort of feel that Chelsea have always been a team when it feels like when they need to win, when they need to get a result to stay in the hunt for something, it always feels like they do. Um, so what are your thoughts coming into this game? Do you have similar thoughts, or are you more concerned that you would usually be when you're at home to Arsenal? How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking forward to this if I'm being honest. Like, I think you guys have been flying at the moment, and we're just really patchy right now. But like you said, form does go out a window, especially if it's a London derby. So, and there is a lot to play for. It's not like a random game towards the end of the season. So I think I don't think it. I mean, I'm hoping for a draw. Obviously, I take the win, but I'm kind of a bit worried. Like, Arsenal could just go there and just batter us. A bit like what United did in the first half against us. Like, they should have been 3-0 up within the first 30 minutes. So if we don't start right, then it could be one of those, and then we're just chasing shadows for the rest of the game.
I mean, it's interesting you say that. We sort of debated on the last pod as to how we thought Arsenal would set up, because when we went to Chelsea last season, we sort of changed our formation around, played a bit more pragmatically, and this season, the consensus from our Arsenalholics group was that actually we'll probably just go with the same system that's been serving us so well this season and try and kind of go with the positivity. I'm undecided as to whether that would be a good thing or it wouldn't be. Arteta has this season sort of seemed to take the approach of kind of what you were sort of alluding to before when you were looking at your next two fixtures. I think Arteta has taken the approach of saying wins are so valuable. You'd rather like win one and lose one than draw two, right? Like points wise, it's just maths. And I think therefore he just seems to almost be going with this approach of just go for the win, go for the win, go for the win. And even when we're level, like we saw against United when we were away at United, even when we were level, I think he was like go for the win, go for the win. And I'm, as an Arsenal fan, I have a concern that us doing that may away at Chelsea with the experience that Chelsea have with your Sterlings and your Obers, like people like that. It could hurt us because we're still relatively young and naive. Nish in the comments saying, "Don't worry, the ref will show up." Raja, I don't know. Obviously, he's a Liverpool fan. I think he's still seething with some decisions that perhaps didn't go Liverpool's way. Obviously, Liverpool never get decisions going their way, right? I mean,
It's true.
They never do. We should all just accept that. Always the victims. But and anyway, yeah. So I I do have concerns around it. How, as I say, is there any chance that Potter may look at this and go, I really don't want to lose this game and set up for a draw? Or do you think that given you're at home, he just won't be able to do that?
I don't think he'll set up as a draw. He's a very attacking manager. Like he is it am I right in thinking he's the last manager to win at the Emirates?
Oh, that's a good one. You're probably right.
Yeah,
You're probably
maybe.
right in the spell that when we lost against Southampton and Brighton and Palace, was Brighton after the Palace game, before the Palace game? But yeah, so maybe.
So yeah, I can't see him like because he's known for just trying to attack and whatever. So I can't see him playing for a draw, if that makes sense. But I think I'm not saying he'll go for it, but like, I think the first half an hour is going to be, the first 20 minutes is going to be so important, because you guys always start well in the first half and the second half. Like, we always come out the gate and just like start playing. So I think if we can settle you guys down, then maybe we can get you on the counter or something like that. But I wouldn't say he'll come in, just set up a draw or anything like that.
Okay. So what's your prediction, mate? What if you're going to call it now? What do you think?
If I was to call it now, I would say I'll never pick my team to lose. But I would say it'll be 1-1.
Okay, I predicted the draw as well. I predicted the 2-2. 1-1 board draw. I can see there being goals in it. I can't see us winning, actually. So that's why I went for a draw. I went for 2-2. I actually think Chelsea. I think it'll either be a draw or Chelsea will win or we'll win. I feel like even though Arsenal have had a decent record recently at Chelsea, it's been very different circumstances. It feels it's been circumstances where actually we've not been playing very well, and it's been kind of a very kind of pragmatic kind of approach to the game, and
it's always towards the end of the season, right?
Yeah, towards the end of the season, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a really different environment. I think I think if we win at Chelsea, I think it'll be like a huge result. But I don't see it happening. So tell me then, from you've said kind of what you'd like to happen for Chelsea, and or what you think will happen for Chelsea in terms of worst case scenario, best case scenario, I suppose. But your top 4 this season, let's just finish it off from that, Press. So what, from right now, if you had to call it, what is your top 4? How do you think it's going to end?
Yeah, it's weird because it changes every week. I think I told you my top 4 on Friday, and then after 5 o'clock, I was like, okay, I'll change it completely. So I think it's a given. Well, maybe not given actually to some people. Fair enough. So, but I think City will win the league. I think second and third is really tough, because for some weird reason, I definitely think you guys will finish either second or third. But for some bizarre reason, Antonio Conte, man, he's not very good in Europe. In fact, he's quite terrible in Europe, and I can't see Tottenham winning their last 16, whoever it is. So I think they'll be out in February, and if they're out in February, they've only got the league to concentrate on, and I can see them coming second. Whereas you guys, I think I can see you guys going further in Europa League, and I can see Arteta trying to win a European trophy. So as that goes along, but I think you've accrued so many points right now that you're kind of expecting, if you drop points, other teams need to pick up points, and I can't really see that. So hence why I have you second or third. But there's something about Conte that I can't shake off. So I'm going to say Conte comes second. I'm not going to say his team comes second. Arsenal come third, and I'm going to be positive, and I'm going to say us fourth.
Interesting, because it's very popular at the moment to say that Man United are going to be in the top 4, right? That seems to be the recent trend that people are talking about. What do you think of them as a? Do you think they are a genuine threat to the top 4 this season?
Definitely. Definitely. Like the way they're playing. I mean, after the first few games, I thought this is hilarious. Like, but they've really picked up. Like, you can tell he's a very good coach. The team that we drew with was exactly the same team that got battered by Brentford 4-0. So you can just see the difference in like 10 games. So I would definitely, if someone came with a top 4 and said United come 4th and we come 5th, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Okay, I'm being trolled in the comments, you see. So this stag, he's obviously still very unhappy at being asked to drink a lot, and it's really surprising given that he didn't really have to drink that much. Let's be honest. But he's saying that I said a win and a loss is better than 2 draws. Invincible, not the best team ever. Then, I mean, if he wasn't so high, which he clearly is at the moment, then he would have heard what I said was a win and a loss is mathematically better than 2 draws, because 3 points is better than 2. That's what I said. Okay. Anyway, mate, have a day off. Just go back to bed. Anyway, sorry everyone.
This guy. It's always about him, isn't it?
It really is. Anyway, listen, Prash, mate, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed having you on. You honestly, you've done an amazing service to any future guest on this show because,
I
know,
hope so.
I mean, Jason was. I mean,
where did you find that
level,
guy? Did you just find him off the streets?
I mean, that's what people are saying. That's what people are saying, and I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. It's a big regret of mine. I'll have to live with that regret. But you have really pulled it back, and I'm sure a lot of people learn a lot from you today. In fact, actually, press to be honest, I've got I get the little thing at the top of the screen which shows how many people kind of are listening in at any given point. And it's been relatively new, right? Us doing live episodes. We haven't been doing it for very long, so the vast majority of people still kind of listen to us through recorded episodes and whatever. We usually literally get about 10, 15 people every now and again who are watching it live. The numbers were up in the 50s, 60s, 70s at one point. So this is definitely the most watch. And I know that, hey, it's not the thousands, but at the end of the day, it's there's a lot of people. Relative terms. Yeah, in relative terms, more people tuned into this episode to listen to you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on, and thanks a lot for being a fantastic guest. And I really hope you come back again. I'd love to have you on the show again, mate. Did you enjoy yourself?
Oh, it was brilliant. Honestly, life goals tick. Amazing. Thanks for having me on, man. I would say good luck, but obviously I don't mean it.
I was going to say the same thing. But listen, I'm one of these Arsenal fans that, as far as when you rank all the various teams that you don't want to see do well, there's plenty of other teams that I want to do worse than Chelsea. So actually, if you ask me who I want in my top 4 this season, I'd much rather Chelsea end up in the top 4.
What is your top 4?
Well, I think I said this to you right before. I think Chelsea will finish in the top 4 still. So I think I think United will finish first. I think that
United will finish.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Jesus.
I hope no one cuts that, and makes that into a soundbite. That's not what I meant. I was literally distracted by the highlights of the Chelsea game on the screen. City will finish first. I think that. Thing is, I said to you, I think Chelsea will finish second. That was before the game against Brighton. So I'm not 100% sure of that yet. I can't see us finishing second for the reason that you basically said. I think that we will get further in the Europa League, and I think all in all, with our squad size, etc., I'm not sure. I don't want to say Tottenham. I really don't want to say it. So I actually think that I'm going to carry. It's going to sound silly. I'm going to carry on and say that Chelsea will finish second, and then I'm going to go for Arsenal third, and I think Man United are going to finish fourth. There's something about Tottenham where I feel like the Champions League, as much as you say, and I agree that they might not end up doing very well in, I feel like Conte, Harry Kane, Son, the big players know that they've got a better chance of winning the Champions League than the Premier League, and they may not get many chances again in terms of because of their age profile and etc. and whatever. And I feel like they will really go for it, and I think they'll take their eye off the Premier League to some extent, not intentionally, just unconsciously. The games in and around the Champions League games, I can imagine them really not wanting to get injured and etc. And I don't think they're a good enough team to play on in sort of a second gear. They rely so much on being able to take advantage of very key moments, right? They need their big players for that. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go therefore with Tottenham finishing outside of the top 4. The more and more, if we have another week that the one that's just gone, in terms of the week where other teams drop points and Tottenham win, I'll probably have to revise my thing because as much as I can criticize Tottenham, the last 2 games they played against, Bournemouth and Marseille, they've been losing positions. They've come back to win. So there is something there, right?
Yeah. Fair enough.
Cool. All right, mate. Well, anyway, thank you very much, and have a nice night. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Please like, share, subscribe. If you have got to the end of this episode, then obviously you really did enjoy it. So, thank you very, very much. Take care, everyone, and we will all talk soon. Thank you, Prash. Good night, mate.
No worries. Cheers, mate.